offices.
Yeah.
Everyone who donated, whether you donated a penny or
Really?
$10,000, gets one.
Wow.
Each from that.
Oh, cool. Cool.
Still have enough money.
Yeah, right, right.
All right, so we've got a B1, B2, and a B3, huh? Kelvin's coming.
No.
It says no.
Ruthie and
We get a confirmation.
Amanda and Ruthie, yes.
It's B-minus, it'll be-
Okay, we are live. We're just going to wait for two board members to be seated and then we'll kick this meeting off.
You want me to read the opening statement or? Well, I can't because board members aren't here.
Right. What's it say on the attendance sheet?
Then, they call me, no, Paula, no, and, Jennifer.
Not attending. She didn't put the reason.
Yeah, supposed to see you today. What sent in that last minute?
Yeah.
We've got 4.
What? I saw a missed call from Christina, so I was like, they must not have it.
Hey, oh,
How are you?
How you doing?
Good.
Warmed up a little bit. Might have been the coldest morning of the year this morning.
I was brisk, so like 30 degrees, I think.
I was out yesterday and
It was.
Oh,
not-
God,
I
the
don't think it was
wind.
Like that, it was the wind.
The wind was out of control.
The wind, yeah. They interviewed earlier. They interviewed earlier. With Channel 4. But they said they were going to send somebody here, but
just as soon as.
Circuit report.
it was, no, she came with her camera and everything. We sat in the conference room.
Saw some of that.
We had to go to Business and Neighborhood Services. Gilbert Foundation was in our front conference room and LPAR was in our back. Janita was mad because they're not supposed to be using our room. Charge. I don't know. But we found space down in Business and Neighborhood Services.
And this conference apparently. Continue tomorrow.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I came to the office.
I heard you parked on the roof.
I counted 3 spaces besides the one that I took.
Wow.
Available. And I didn't see any coming up. And I didn't see any from what I could see.
Right.
The other.
Wow.
The cars driving around.
Yeah.
Good thing. Who knows, communicator's not working.
And also like in the middle of the day yesterday, it stopped working.
Hopefully I got it. Yeah, I hadn't noticed that, but I used it this morning. Working.
This morning. I didn't notice it this afternoon. I was still using it.
Man,
I leave mine open and it worked all day.
Yeah, I like refreshed it and then it was.
where's that site?
Is it on the same river or?
It's in between. And that. We have to go home.
Thanks.
Traffic caught by the bridge, or the Wapu Cut Bridge, maybe.
Usually the late one. Come on,
Are you in that house yet?
not yet.
Not yet?
We got floors in, we have tile,
Good,
that, things are happening.
okay. You're all
Been on the roof
closed,
for a
you're all
while,
closed in, you're all closed. in.
Yeah. It's been driving for a while, which makes it all the more frustrating to watch. Like, you're like, oh, wow, look, we have a house. There's nothing inside.
It's tough because they come out of the ground quickly.
Yeah,
And then it just.
and then the dreaded punch list. I think we'll probably be in by May.
What did you experience with that 9.8 tide? Does it come up into your backyard or?
Did not. I mean, it came up, but it didn't get in the garage or anything like that. So, I mean, we were elevated.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That was point number one when we were planning. It's like, I'm not gonna chance it on this.
Right, but the water did press the bank and come into your,
Yeah.
what would be your backyard?
I wasn't there, but I sort of divined the line, by the marsh grass and stuff like that. And it comes up, but
$25.
I was hoping everyone would resend it and then. And no.
I tell you, driving gets scarier every day. I had somebody the other day literally just try to merge into my lane because they were trying to pass a truck and I was like, I'm right here. I mean, I had to honk my horn, God forbid.
Oh, that's not polite.
I know, I didn't want her to hit me, I figure I saved her some trouble. But and I had to be pulled over because it was so like sudden that I didn't know if I got hit or not, because I was just like, and she pulled in behind me in the side street, and she was just like, oh, she said, we're all doing the best we can.
That's
It's okay.
it. Thankfully, you were alert.
Yeah. It's a distracted driving, I think, is what people are, like, people are on their phones and they're not paying attention. And then it just snowballs.
Yeah.
Hopefully, that's what she says. Yes, I'm live. It's okay. She's in the lobby. Be rolling in just a second. They should take her parking pass later, being late. Never pay.
Sorry, I'm not sure you're all off, but I do need to do before.
That's right, you can sit on the end out there.
Well, I can't do it.
No,
No, you're
all
good.
right, it's fine. All right,
Okay,
we're gonna get things started
everybody
now.
seated.
This is the February 7th, 2024 meeting of the City of Charleston Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design. Present are Amanda Bart, Ruthie Ravenel, Jeff Webb, myself, Joel Adrian. Present from the planning staff, Eric Schultz and Lee Batchelder. These proceedings are being recorded, and we ask that those who speak identify themselves for the record. We will conduct this meeting in usual fashion. We will first receive information from city staff about the application and their recommendation. Recommendation is favorable and no one objects to the application. The matter is uncontested. The board reserves the right to ask questions of staff, applicants, or others in attendance prior to rendering a decision. If, however, the city recommends against the application or there is opposition to the application, treat the application as contested. Hear from the applicant and anyone else who is in favor of the application. Next, we hear from anyone opposed, followed by a short rebuttal from the applicant. We then close the public hearing portion of the meeting for that particular application and open discussion to the Board of Zoning Appeals members only. We will then make a decision to approve with conditions, deny, or defer the application. Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design has the authority to do three things. One, hear appeals to decisions of the zoning administrator. Two, grant special exceptions, fact-finding function of the board. Three, grant variances to the zoning ordinance if the application meets the hardship test outlined in section 54-924 of the ordinance. The board may deliberate, make a final decision on a matter by a majority vote of members present at the hearing and qualified to vote, provided that not less than a quorum are present and qualified to vote. For for a variance to be granted, the Board of Zoning Appeals must make the following findings. A, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. C, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And D, the authorization of variance will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property or the public good. Character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. And I don't believe we have anything deferred. So our first item is going to be item A1, which is the minutes from the January 3rd, 2024 meeting. If there are any questions, comments, or if there's a motion for approval.
I'll move for approval.
Right.
A second.
All right, motion for approval. All in favor, say aye in favor.
I favor.
Favor, any opposed? Motion is approved 4-0. That'll bring us to our first item of new business, which is item B1, and that is 813 DuPont Road, 804 Orleans Road. So that's in West Ashley. The TMS numbers are 351-1300047 and 067 is zoned GB. Requested variance from section 54-327 to allow the removal of 10 grand trees. Request a special exception from section 54-327 to allow the removal of 5 grand trees. Request a variance from section 54-330 to allow a reduced impervious setback near the bases of 11 grand trees. Finally, request a variance from section 54-327 to omit the 15 protected trees per acre requirements. Eric.
Okay, we're going to take a trip west. Actually, this is the application signed by the applicant, Kellum Engineering. This is their explanation for meeting the hardship test and other information. So this site is West Ashley. It's bound by Orleans, Dulce, and DuPont. Presently 2 parcels. Eventually the property line between the 2 will be abandoned to create 1 parcel to enable the proposed hotel development. Zone GB, and it's also in the accommodations overlay zone. This is just a larger idea of the neighborhood that it exists in. You can see the majority, I would say the majority is surrounded by parcels in the city, and then the white parcels are in the county. Aerial view presently, so the parcel that fronted on DuPont was at one point a mobile home park type of development, and it also had a small house on it. All of that has been scraped and it's been vacant for a couple of years, number of years. The parcel that fronts on Orleans, I've been here 23 years. It apparently was a parcel with a house on it. I don't recall the house being on it. So I've been driving by that parcel for many years and it just being a vacant lot. This is a Google Street View shot into this on Orleans Road, looking into the site today. You can see the old driveway curb cut in the foreground. This is, I've now turned on to Dulce. And this is a view looking back. This is with the small house still standing, the mobile homes gone. You can see some remnant driveways and maybe some old electrical conduit and that sort of thing, but I'm on DuPont now. The proposed project in front of you tonight is a hotel. I believe it's 130 rooms. I'll stand corrected if I'm wrong. Rectangular in shape. And you can see its associated parking. Primary entrance would be off Orleans. Obviously, that's the road that traverses between Sam Rittenberg and Savannah Highway. And of course, if visitors are coming from afar, either traveling 17 or I-526, this would probably be the closest entrance. It will also have a secondary entrance on DuPont and one on Dulce. So 3 points of access. Note the large blue dot. That is the granddaddy of the tree on the property. We'll discuss that tree in a little bit. It's 96 inches in diameter. Then we have a nice cluster of live oak grade Bs adjacent to the Wells Fargo access drive to the north, planned north. A couple other grand trees anchoring the Dulce DuPont corner, and then others sporadically peppered throughout the site, if you will. You can note that there are a few F-grade trees verified by staff. And then again, the arborist, consulting arborist came up with the grades in which the city agreed with.
So does that modify the Weston?
So yes, I'll get to that in just a moment. So this is a blow up of that plan with that particular TMS. This is the Orleans site. And I put the numbers on the trees as they relate to the table. I don't know if you would be talking about specific trees, but I thought that would be a little easier to understand. So again, the large tree entry kind of centered on that with the hotel front, and then parking veering off to the left. And then the porte cochere drop off in front of the hotel on the backside of the tree, and then people would disperse to available parking. This is the DuPont side. Again, there's a small detention pond now that actually takes water from the Wells Fargo. And it has some trees growing in it. It hasn't been maintained for years, but the cluster of trees against that property, a 41-inch live oak in the center, and then the trees that kind of lined the property around the perimeter. So no, in this case, we're maintaining 10 variants to remove 10, special exception to remove 5. So this is the breakdown by parcel. And you can see how they have it labeled there. So your special exceptions are the elms and the water oaks. Your variants are your red oaks, laurel oaks, and live oak. Then the impacts are listed there. And then, of course, the second parcel on the DuPont is on the right. So we have a duplicate tree 10, if you will, and others, but if you need to, I numbered those. This is just some of the field notes from the arborist that was submitted for the application. This is their table that they used and recorded their comments about each tree. Again, this is the other side. You can see where the trailers, this is an old survey. Obviously, they got their hands on, but how the layout of the mobile homes were on the site, and electrical easements and sewer easements and so on and so forth. So these trees have been have been adjusted to some impact over the past years with the past use. Again, this is that table of trees. So photos, I have incorporated some photos, staff photos, but these are the photos that were submitted by the applicant. So again, if we need to revisit a tree, just let me know. We'll try and find it. But again, by TMS number. So the 96-inch live oak is proposed to be preserved, obviously. We had numerous discussion about this branch that failed. You know, it gives character to the tree today, but we had Bartlett experts come into the picture. And Cameron Rickert, who is part of the Bartlett team that, you know, oversees the maintenance of the Angel Oak. They've done a lot of work on Middleton Oak. So he came in and evaluated the branch. You know, there was discussion whether to prop the branch, keep it. Liability issues were discussed, and his conclusion is that the branch should be removed and then the wound should be traced out. Primarily due to the collection of moisture and decay possibly that would begin. Where actually, you know, the reason for the failure might have been included bark, a little bit of decay as at that branch attachment. But anyway, I wanted to include this. So the city's in agreement that that should be removed after that evaluation. This is important. This is a grade B tree to be removed. Please note that you see the outline of this, what I would call the southern or western side of the proposed hotel. And also note that the site falls from top, if you will, from the Wells Fargo side of the site to Dulce, probably about 4 to 6 feet. I'll let the engineer verify that. But in this case, this property is in the Doo-Wop drainage basin, formerly known as the Tiger Swamp Basin. And in order to meet some stormwater regulations and all, they plan to build this site up to almost the elevation of Dulce. So a lot of study into this particular tree, but you know, to meet stormwater requirements and then the site falling as it does, and that road being at a higher elevation. And of course, the city's TRC requirement is that this 3 sides of this property will be bound by new sidewalk as a requirement. So with sidewalk, you get street trees and lights and so on and so forth. So a lot of activity, and that ditch will no longer be. So I just wanted to point that out. But that's my back is to, I guess, the east, if you will, or the Wells Fargo looking toward Dulce. You can see the grade differential there, and then the side view. This is the grade B tree to be saved. This is at the rear or the DuPont side of the hotel. You can see that this tree, you know, if we go back to that survey, probably had a mobile home around it at one time. There was some limbs pruned. It's healing over well. It's a grade B, and they were able to give it pretty sufficient space. This is the cluster of live oak looking, again, north, if you will. Again, you can see some of the remnant of the foundation where the small house was in the foreground there. Pretty much leaving this cluster intact, just a couple small encroachments with parking. And then this is looking south or east. This is the corner of Dulce and DuPont. Unfortunately, the 1B grade tree with the significant arch is proposed to be removed. Again, it's a drive aisle issue and parking, but then we have a B grade live oak to be saved, another B grade, a C, and a B as we wrap around the corner. So with that said, staff recommends approval with the condition to plant 353 caliber inches of native canopy trees on the site. Must use 4-foot chain link fence as tree protection barricades. Must provide a specific tree preservation plan for the large central live oak. Related to that live oak, I want to go back just to refresh your memory of the site plan. Then I'll go back to the condition. But note the crosshatch, that's the protection zone based on the diameter, but they surveyed the crown. And, you know, there was a lot of discussion around this tree. Could we get closer to it? And my feeling, staff's feeling was that this tree deserves all the green space it can get. And so my recommendation is to allow the small encroachments into the crown drip line, as you see, but then that blue zone should be, I'll go back to my condition. Well, that there should be no fill or cut or new planting in that blue zone. In my opinion, it should just simply be mulched and have drip irrigation. And, you know, that tree needs all the resources it needs and not to be competing with anything else to maintain it as it is an over mature live oak. So they can do beautiful plantings outside of that zone in front of the hotel. In my opinion, that blue zone should be a no-touch zone except for those small encroachments. Must provide a tree preservation plan for the remaining grand trees on the development parcel. And then finally, must provide a landscape plan for staff review and approval. Street trees can be upsized with approval of the Parks Department if full mitigation cannot be provided on site. And as street trees, a contribution to the city street tree program may be made.
All right, Eric, thank you. Is there anybody present that is opposed to this application? No one present opposed. Is the applicant here?
And before that gets started, by the way, you have your written comments that were submitted via Innovate. And we received no written comments for item 1 and 2. The only 2 submitted were for item 3.
Would you like to be heard?
Thomas Kellum of Kellum Engineering, presenting on behalf of Palacis Holdings, Mr. Palacis. Just Eric touched on a lot of the, reasons for the request tonight. Real high level, it's a drainage issue. This is within a special protection area, and the site does drain. Generally, it's about elevation 12 to 13 up near Wells Fargo. Down on Dulce, it gets down to elevation 6 and 7 range. And as you can see on the site plan, a lot of the grand trees we're trying to remove are near Dulce. That's due to the requirement to bring in some fill there. One for, to meet ADA requirements. The other is we're going to bring in fill in that area and provide some underground detention to be able to maintain, the existing conditions that stand today. All of those trees are inundated with stormwater during a heavy rainfall event. That's why they're in poor quality. The 145-inch that Eric touched on is really, we've studied this with staff quite a bit. The initial plan to come in here was to do some flex space that was going to front Dulce. I created a lot of internal site issues there. Through talking with staff, it was determined that a better use for the property would be a hotel. The function of the site itself, or function of a hotel itself, and we touched on a lot of this in the letter, and we go into great detail if the board would like us to, but really is to provide a drive aisle around the hotel. That's for ease of guest use. That's for also deliveries, things of that nature, safety, having the hotel center not running a right of way, so you don't have pedestrians coming by on Dulce or DuPont or Orleans that may interact with guests and the peacefulness of their stay there. And really, it's the stormwater is the bulk majority of the tree removals, the requirements. Also on the protected trees, the previous developments that were here 20 plus years ago cleared the site, except for there's an internal shared property line, and that's where the bulk majority of the remaining protected trees are. And in doing so, the grass has been maintained, is cut weekly, bi-weekly. The property is maintained to where no trees have been allowed to grow other than those that were saved during that time. Of the majority of the protected trees we're removing, we broke it down. They were all graded as well. 34 of the 38 are C, B, and Fs. There are 4 B trees that are being proposed, protected trees that are proposed to be removed. It's a pine, sweet gum, water oak, and live oak. The live oak sits in the center of the property, right where the footprint of the hotel itself is. So there's not an opportunity to save that one protected B live oak. As far as the criteria, the extraordinary and exceptional conditions, I think we touched on that a little bit. We can go into more detail if the board has any questions. Doesn't apply to any other properties in the vicinity. There aren't any properties within the neighborhood that are of this size and that could support a hotel. They also, any properties that may, it's unique to have 4 to 5 feet of fall across the site. And certainly in the middle of West Ashley. So that's, unique to this property and has created some design issues for us. Because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to a particular piece of property effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. If we had restricted the application of the ordinance, the property, not to say it's undevelopable, but it's been studied in great detail. The previous owner was a residential developer. They worked with city staff and couldn't come to a feasible site plan. We have studied this for 4 years. That's going through that flex space to now the hotel. Kelm Engineering has been on board for the last 2 years, and we're working with city staff. We believe this is the best use of the property. Granting of the variance will not be a detriment to the neighborhood or the public good. We went through BZA zoning to get into the accommodations. During that study, the impact on the neighborhood, everyone was in agreement that this would be a good use to the neighborhood. In addition to that, Mr. Palacios and his team has put together, if I can furnish the board, please. These are some economic impacts to the neighborhood and also the city itself. So this is just high level. I'm talking about the public good. The first year, we're looking at estimated fees generated for the city to be 500,000 plus. Recurring annual fees would be in the $300,000 range. They look to employ 30 employees at an average salary of around 45,000. So 1.35 million in annual payroll. Those employees will also receive benefits, medical, vision, dental insurance, 401ks, et cetera. The True Brand by Hilton is an affordable hotel that caters to budget-minded travelers for corporate travel Sunday through Thursday and families for weekend sporting competitions or vacations. Typical True guest desires a trusted Hilton experience at a fair price. True Brand has an average daily rate of $130 a night with breakfast included. So this project is a great benefit to the community. We believe it's a benefit to West Ashley as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else present that would like to speak in favor of this application?
My name is Jay Masti. I'm counsel to Palace Holdings LLC. I just wanted to introduce Jim Palacios, make sure everybody knew that Jim Palacios and his son Nick Palacios are here. They are Palace Holdings LLC.
Well. Good evening. My name is Keith Waring. I'm on city council, and in another life I sat in position that you all are in on the planning commission. So thank you for your service. 17 years. I wanted to just thank city staff, Mr. Schultz and Mr. Batchelder for working with Mr. Palacios and Kelm Engineering. This is a long time coming. The city passed a tax incremental financing district, which is designed to help revitalize West Ashley, in particular San Whitberg Boulevard. San Whitberg Boulevard is 3 miles long. It starts at Savannah, ends up at Northbridge. And so much information has been put on Northbridge, Piggly Wiggly, Sumar Street site. In 2016, the TIF district was put in place. So when development occurs, the taxes will remain in that area to help improve the stormwater and infrastructure, etc. This is the first major commercial development that will be in that tax incremental financing district. And it's happening on this end of the opposite end, frankly, the Sumar Street. The county, if you may remember, years ago, we had the Doo-Wop planning district, which is county, the city, because we do have unincorporated areas here. Bradley Moody, Councilor Moody with the county, and the county team is ready, willing, and able to join in with the city because this is a major stormwater drainage. Mr. Schultz talked about the Tiger Swamp. It really was a swamp. And you see it when you go around I still call it Citadel Mall, but the Epic Center during heavy rain events, and you see how so much water inundates the area. So I want to thank all the extra work. Mr. Kelly talked about 4 years to get it to this point and the compromise that you worked through. So sometimes you do the hard work, and some people, we don't get up and say thank you. I just want to thank you for all the work that you're doing to help this happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to be heard in favor? We'll close this application to the public. We'll open to the board for discussion. Questions? So I'll start. Question, your parking requirement, is it right on the money, or is it because the only tree that I see is that one that's sitting in the parking lot?
For the handicap spaces.
It's a B grade tree, and I just wonder if there's a way to shift parking somewhere.
That tree leans, it's not quite a 45, but it's probably a 30-degree angle into the property. So it would have to be pretty severely impacted as far as limbing it in order to provide a drive
Are we
out.
looking at which one?
What
The
number?
one with the yellow bubble around,
27.5?
it's a very low arching tree. It really, I don't know, was there a power line on that property line? I think there might have been.
There was previously a power line on the
And
property.
so
Right underneath
it
it.
got trimmed, and it's, you know, I was surprised it was given a B. I think specifically because it was a live oak. But we looked at that, and, you know, as stated, many evolutions of this design, you know, we were thinking how we could create a green space under it and not park under it, but with that overarching. So that's that, number 37.
So in reality, the bubble, the canopy is shown as larger going into the roadway.
Yes.
Just like that.
Yeah.
98-inch tree, major canopies.
So you're saying that you did request that all of the trees would have a tree protection plan,
Yes.
preservation plan, right?
Yes. So one specific to the granddaddy, because it deserves it. Not only the space around it as shown as green space, but, you know, as I state, no fill cut, no planting within that zone. That's my thought, but I think engage the consulting arborist to do a specific plan for that long term. And then every other, the remaining grand trees will also have a tree preservation plan developed for obviously the small, we go back to the site plan.
I like the grouping of the
Very small.
separate groupings of the bees.
Yeah. Very small encroachments. And again, the house used to sit there, the trailers used to sit in there. So I think the trees are acclimated to some impact, or, you know, but yes, a plan for those to remain.
I feel like the majority of the trees are poor quality, like the grouping of the 3 Bs and the C right at the corner. And then the one back there by the Wells Fargo, it seems like they've done a very nice job of targeting areas to keep buffer privacy from one use to the next and from public realms.
I went out and walked the site before last meeting, last time it was on the agenda. And you know, it's kind of lovely. It's sort of like the BAR, but it's in reverse. In this case, stormwater is dictating what happens with the site as compared to the buildings and the having to build to the street. You know, forcing, you know, what happens. But there's definitely a lot of fall. I'm okay with it, you know, with especially along that Dulcie frontage. It's not great. So is this not in a, is this being on, wouldn't Orleans and DuPont fall into them needing to go to,
DRB, but it's in a job center, so I believe it's done at staff. Is that correct?
Yes.
It won't go to a full board, but it will be done, handled at staff with David Meeks and as well as our new city architect.
okay, because I know typically they're looking for, you know, more treatment of the frontage, right? And not having the building right up at the frontage.
Yes, ma'am.
Or the building would be closer to this street usually.
Yes, ma'am. I was not personally part of those meetings, but there have been some preliminary discussions with David, and he's in support of this layout.
And I can speak to that too, because after the last meeting that we had together to talk about different options, which was over a month ago, I think. I did bring this up with the DRB staff. And I was told that, yes, they had had that meeting and they had already accepted that they would not be getting the building up on the
Mhm.
street, that it had to be situated back off the street.
But they could still do some treatment along that edge where all those trees are coming out. Like a wall.
To be determined.
Yeah, that's to be determined.
Was there any discussions or conditions for pervious paving in these encroachment areas? I know there's that, if there's.
Yeah, so, that's a good point. I'm sure Thomas is going to be working very closely with stormwater management to incorporate some LID infiltration if the soil is permitted. Even with,
Because there's parking stalls.
even with pervious paving,
Yeah,
the detail on a pervious paving, you still have to put a good
Exactly.
base, so you're still excavating. So sometimes it's almost better to try and do as minimal scraping and just do an asphalt space, but details to be worked out.
And then on the other end, that corner, I know you're talking, your underground detention is going kind of that low area next to the ditch. Is the ditch staying?
The ditch we're gonna try to remove the ditch. We have to build a sidewalk on the
Mhm.
three frontages there. So the idea is to remove that
Okay,
ditch.
I was going to ask about these down at the corner, even though they're poor grades, that one's barely on the property.
The thought process there, I think, is that would be.
Those are in the ditch or on the
They
bank?
are in the ditch. That's the lowest area of the site. That's around elevation 6. And we would have some sort of, stormwater management system right in that area. And it's our thought that we could remove those and, still dress that back up with something, but that they're pretty poor quality trees, and removing those would allow us to treat the stormwater better in that area.
Yeah, I see. You also got that 98-inch that just will capture everybody's, for either one of those streets or lanes with Dulce, you're gonna see that 98-inch tree, so. The shrubbery that's in, it's just enhancement.
they could almost do that little spur here of parking though, it's staff parking or something. If something was to be pervious paving in terms of parking, that would help it all. Cause it's, further away from most of the hotel units.
Any other questions or comments?
Can we get back to your recommendations, Eric? Is this is in Doo-Wop, that's what the neighborhood would be? Or is it,
So there's a
Not much
district,
far, it's too
Doo-Wop,
far.
from Wapu Road over to this area. It's in that, there's an overlay zone.
right, but what neighborhood council?
I don't know if there's a neighborhood council here. Do you know one?
I don't believe there is in this immediate area, right?
Because there aren't a lot of street trees immediate to this area. But there are some neighborhoods nearby and there are some other parks like, Mulberry Park is under development over, off of Wapu Road. I'm just thinking about where the trees may be, if they can't meet the tree requirement, there's some other opportunities where they could put material.
Well, I hope that, they'll obviously engage a landscape architect will hopefully plant the next generation of trees on site where appropriate. They can, as I'm stating, meet the minimum street tree, upsize the street tree with parks approval. And then any residual would be a contribution to the city street tree program.
I make a motion, we move to approve the staff recommendations.
I second.
Righty, so the motion is for approval with staff conditions by Brandon, seconded by Jeff. All in favor, say aye in favor.
Okay.
I in favor.
Aye in favor. Matters approved 4-0. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right, so our next item would be item B2. B2 is Beast Ferry Road and West Ashley Circle in West Ashley, TMS number 305080060. It is zone GP. Request a variance from section 54-327 to allow the removal of 9 grand trees. Request a special exception from section 54-327 to allow the removal of 6 grand trees. Request a variance from section 54-330 to allow a reduced impervious setback near the bases of 19 grand trees. And finally, request a variance from section 54-327 to omit 15 trees per acre requirement. Eric.
All right, we're going to take a trip a little further out West Ashley. And I might state now that the application will be modified for 7 grand trees requiring a variance and 4 requiring a special exception. And that's after our findings of our walk through the site. So this is the application. Kimberly Horn being the applicant, owner being Whitfield Construction. Their hardship explanation. So, West Ashley Circle, many years ago, a charrette occurred, West Ashley. The whole concept of the circle was born. And then soon after that, the city looked at different zoning character or zoning classifications. And the gathering place was born. So this particular quadrant was zone gathering place, GP. And that ordinance has very specific criteria that the development has to meet. So this is just the map of the area. This site is, there was a concept many years ago when that charrette occurred out in the Bees Ferry Glen McConnell intersection, that the hope would be that money would become readily available and the power lines would be rerouted and parallel the railroad tracks. Well, that costs a lot of money, and this is a pretty significant transmission line. One coming from the north that ties into it. You got the substation just off the top of the page here, then a pretty significant series of transmission lines traversing. So the Walmart moves forward and the power lines traverse over top of that parking field. Not also to mention about this site, Mr. Whitfield, when he was alive a number of years ago, asked the city to consider some land work, earthwork, if you will, to occur on this to eliminate a pretty significant phosphate mine. And you can almost see it in below the transmission line where those younger pines are. That was a pretty significant phosphate mine, and the city allowed that to occur. He left a remnant little forested portion by Glen McConnell, and then some remnant trees and forest closer to Bees Ferry. So the site's been worked over, if you will, by utilities. Recently, a gas main transmission came from the north and a new regulating station was built, and we'll show that. And then of course you have the canal. I don't know how many years back that was built, but it's a pretty significant drainage system that drains the Church Creek Basin, and it passes under the railroad there into Church Creek, which then makes its way to the Ashley River. Today, it's being used for laydown with the construction of the Glen McConnell expansion in the easement. This is Bees Ferry, view into it. Bees Ferry impacted the site with the widening. Crepes were planted. The distribution lines are still existing. So under the gathering place district, the ordinance allows public and or private roads, but you have to select street types. You have to create certain block lengths and have a mix of uses. So you can see those round dots over the transmission line are the setbacks from poles. You've got wetlands, remnant freshwater wetlands, some ditches that were left as a result of the earthwork with the demolition of the phosphate mines. So a very altered site. So you basically have two pods. You have the southern pod and the northern pod. The southern will be multifamily development. The northern will be a mixed use with retail, office, restaurant. The road street on the Bees Ferry, the main one in the center, has to oppose a street on the north side of Bees Ferry, Winter Circle, or actually the second one to the west, or east has to oppose Winter Circle. The other one to the east, or no, I'm sorry, I'm getting my directions. West is left, east is right. That will be a right in, right out only because of the median, and then Winter Circle has to line up with Winter Circle. So there you go. There's been some disturbance on the northern portion. That's on the Bees Ferry side. Mr. Whitfield pushed some dirt around, maintained some protected trees, and barricaded the grand trees. We ran into the fencing that still exists out there and what have you. Storms have impacted this site. So with all that said, again, I'll break down the trees on the multifamily. You have 2, 5, and 6, 2 D grade trees, 1 C grade. They're going to actually preserve that wetland through some evolutions of the design, make it a open space kind of feature, and cross it with a small bridge to the planned south with the 2 B grade trees being bisected by a drive aisle. And then, of course, in the center where the main body of the multifamily is, that's where the phosphate mines are, so there's no grand trees. The upper half, there was a thought that that F tree in the island where the road splits would be a prized tree, but it ended up having significant storm damage, so it's an F. So this may be tweaked a little bit, but you can see the effort to maintain the B grade trees. A couple of them adjacent to the easement, others near the wetlands, and a couple to be incorporated into what we call the GP requires different types of open space, plazas, greenways, parks. So they're looking at a couple of open spaces there. This is the revised. Keep in mind that elms are really special exceptions. So the 2 elms in the upper category get dropped down. That's where the modification for 4. And then the variances drop to 7. These are the pictures of the trees. Very wet, swampy type land. You can see water standing, vines. Big buttress roots, a sure sign of wet conditions. Some stump sprouts. Storm damage.
You're at the bottom of the Church Creek Basin.
Yeah.
Yep, we're at
That railroad is the bottom.
That's right. That's right. So, again, staff has met numerous times to get what we call a legal gathering place concept, if you will, with the block lengths, the frontage ratios, and we feel that the plan has come along. So therefore, staff recommends, based on all the extraordinary conditions of this site, we'll recommend approval with the condition to plant 218 caliber inches of native canopy trees on the site, must use 4-foot chain link fence and street protection barricades, must maintain the cluster of grand trees. So this is, if you look at the site plan, against the canal, there's a linear wetland system that there's a pocket of wetlands in the transmission easement, and then kind of drains. Then there's a little bit of high ground. I think there's some maybe 9 Bs in that area and a couple Cs. So we want that to be preserved and maybe engaged into some open space improvements. That's condition number 2 or 3, I mean, must work with staff to shift the center line of driveway, parking spaces and sidewalks out of the TBZ of a few grand trees. A specific tree preservation plan must be submitted for the cluster of trees in the center open space in the mixed use portion of the plan, and the open space around the trees must remain at grade, so we don't want to, introduce fill or anything in there. Must provide a tree preservation for the remaining grand trees on site, and then provide a landscape plan for staff review and approval.
All right, Eric, thank you. We'll start with anybody present that is opposed to the application.
Again, there were no
Comment.
comments submitted for this project.
Then is the applicant present, like you heard?
I am Andrew Todd Burke, landscape architect with Kinley Horn. Thanks everyone for the time. Wanted to thank Eric, as he mentioned. There's a lot of challenges to this site. And so we have been site planning on this, me personally, for about 18 months, and prior to that, about 2.5 years with a different firm. So it's very challenging. I just wanted to touch on a few things. So about the lower areas adjacent to the canal, actually just met with the stormwater department today, and we are going to be working together to hopefully enhance the project that the city is working on right now, where they got a grant from the National Wildlife Association, and they're working with biohabitats to do some enhancements to the canal. So our hope is that we can contribute in some way. It could be as informal as we just kind of work alongside them. There may be transfer of property, but essentially the idea is that yes, it will be incorporated into an open space, and hopefully there'll be some educational aspects into it, maybe some boardwalk systems so people can get into it. But we're kind of excited about that in general. But I'm just here for any questions that you guys may have. Appreciate your time once again, and thank you, Eric.
Thank you. Anybody else want to be heard as in favor? We'll close the application to the public. It'll be open to the board for discussion and questions.
How many other this is one of the only places that ended up remaining a gathering space zoning, correct?
There's several throughout.
Bankton.
Well, a portion of that actually got rezoned to a PUD,
Right,
the Avalon. But that's one on James Island. This area, West Ashley, there's some at the intersection of I-526 and Clements Ferry Road,
okay.
basically at large nodes
Mhm.
within the city.
It looks like a great plan.
I think again, when you look at the trees that they're saving versus the trees that they're removing, it seems like there was considerable thought on trying to locate elements, drives, and things of that nature. So,
Yeah, and if you've ever walked through a phosphate mine remnant up to your neck, it's challenging. Soil's challenging, everything about it. I think they did a good job too with the trees. And it looks like they should be able to do all their planting on site in this one.
Agreed.
And I think that's a great idea, hooking them with what biohabitats is doing. And sort of the little corridor there. I'll make a motion to move to some
I'll second.
staff recommendations.
I'll second.
motion for approval by Amanda, seconded by Ruthie. All in favor of that motion, say aye in favor.
I in favor.
Aye in favor. Any opposed? Opposed, it's approved 4-0. Thank you, Fuji. Approves. That'll move us to the last item on the agenda, which is item B3. It's 806 Magnolia Road. TMS number 418-09-00-030, zoned SR2. Requested variance from section 54-327 to allow the removal of 2 grand trees. Request a special exception from section 54-327 to allow the removal of 1 grand tree. Eric's.
Okay, West Ashley once again, but closer into the Magnolia, Avondale kind of area. This is a unusual lot for the neighborhood. Has a house on it and a couple of accessory structures, and land. And zoned SR2, so this is a residential infill project, if you will. Zoned SR2 has frontage on Magnolia, a small frontage on Paula Drive in the Magnolia Neighborhood Council area. You can see the house close to Paula and Magnolia, the garage, there's a greenhouse, and then a lot of open space and trees. This is a view from, my back is in that side street, what's that side street? Barrett. And looking into the old house, which will be preserved and restored. There's a fence knee wall and that live oak, not the sweet gum to the left with the sun shining on it, but the tree a little further back dark is a live oak. And it just happens to be right opposing. So we had to deal with SCDOT, we staked it out. And they're in agreement to have just a slight offset to oppose Barrett Road. And that would be the entrance. Talk about that in a little bit. This is a shot looking back off of Paula. So a small, basically 8 lot with the existing home being maintained as a lot. It's going to end up being a private road with a large, modified cul-de-sac, if you will, with some visitor parking incorporated into that area. And you can see the grand trees colored and graded by Charleston tree experts. And, you know, SR2 has 25 front, 9 sides, so they got very small building footprints, but they're coming up with a product to work in those setbacks. So 7 is a double water oak, and 26 and 37 are both pecan trees. And then the others, the 24 is a F grade pecan tree, and you'll, once you see this D grades, you'll maybe kind of understand. And then 28 is a engulfed in vines in the back there. 30 is a big red oak. We studied that thoroughly and agree with the C grade. So you can see this, the slight offset. We did not advertise the small encroachment because we have, let me just go through these photos first. This is the connected at the base, 30-inch water oak. This is the pecan with a big hole in it. And this one is engulfed in vines. A branch actually broke out recently, but couldn't quite get it to an F. But so there's a 57-page report available upon request. And they do a thorough job. But this is the tree protection plan for the tree out front, working with the engineer and the landscape architect who's present. Again, we offset that. Utilities we feel are good. The sidewalk we feel will work. And he's laid out orders of tree preservation and more details on that. And then this is just the photo of the stakeout. So the 2 stakes are basically edge of pavement. And then the 1 stake that's kind of hidden there is the width of the 5-foot sidewalk. And then you can see the distance from the tree, but due to the diameter of the tree, there is a slight encroachment, but we're feeling comfortable about it. And the tree needs help. It's being engulfed in vines and will be treated and brought back to its glory. So with that said, for the removal of the 1 tree requiring a special exception, 2 requiring a variance, must plant 56 caliber inches of native canopy trees on the site. In this case, when you divide that, I think I came up with, I can't remember the exact number, but I thought that we could do 3-inch tree, like 7 trees on a lot, be shown on the single family house plan and inspected prior to the CCC issued for the house. So that's 7 trees, and then the remaining 14 at 2.5 inch could be native trees planted within the private right of way. And then we'll count those. And then must use 4-foot chain link fences, tree protection barricades, must maintain the grand and non-grand trees adjacent to the common property lines, and that relates to the 2 comments that we got, which I'll read in just a minute. Must provide a tree preservation plan for the remaining grand trees, and then provide a landscape plan for staff. And so the 2 comments were, I fielded 1 call from an individual. I apologize, I can't remember her name, but she was just curious about the project, but these, I opposed the removal of it. Oh, this came from Lindsay and Siegel.
Schlegel, I think it is.
Okay, from Clearview Drive, which I think is on James Island. Opposed the removal of any grand trees on this property. Those trees make the neighborhood what it is and desirable to live there. It was part of our history and the city, and it would be irreversible mistake to take them out. And then Jennifer Nance, 3 Terry Drive, which is abutting this project. I live behind the property in question. These grand trees add character to the neighborhood, and it's a shame to see them go for the sake of development and privacy. I can understand if they are sick or dying, but otherwise there's no reason for them to be removed. There is a reason they are protected, correct? If so, then why does it seem to be so easy to have them removed? I'm seeing this happen all over the beautiful city, and it's just a crying shame.
Thank you, Eric.
But I did, and I failed to, I should have brought that email. I sent an email of the plan because I received an email. And I can't remember if it was Miss Nate's. But she was concerned about the trees on the common property line. So I sent this to her and showed that the grand trees, the only tree I really have sole jurisdiction over, are being preserved along the common property lines.
Very good. Thank you, Eric. Since the applicant's the only person left in attendance, I'll assume he's not opposed to the application. And we will let you be heard if you'd like to present to the board.
Thanks, y'all. Good evening. My name is Todd Richardson. I'm a landscape architect for the project, principal with Synchronicity. Thanks for hearing us tonight. We've been working on this parcel. I'm sure probably every landscape architect has worked on this parcel, but we were able to solve for X on it finally. And we worked around the trees from day one. Very sensitive to it. Also doing a by right plan, no rezonings. Previous applications of other folks have tried to put high density in here, and also being architects as well with our firm, we were very interested to preserve and actually restore the house. It was built in the 1920s. It's had some weird additions and also some aluminum siding put on it. So we're really looking forward to bringing that house back to glory as well. It was a real great effort to work with Eric. We had several site meetings with our arborist, a very thorough arborist, and our civil engineer, working with the DOT, who was surprisingly charming to work with on not having a perfectly aligned driveway. But we sent the application in to show that we were saving this tree and it was important. And so they granted approval on that. So we do have DOT approval to shift that driveway as well. I don't like to remove a lot of trees, and the only ones that we typically remove are Ds and Fs, and that's what we have here tonight. We're really excited. This property has a lot of really unique trees. One that's not on this application or in the way of anything is this really incredible pine tree. It's just massive. And we have a great red oak at the back, which we're saving. And we have a concerted effort for the 38-inch live oak in front with a multi-stage plan of pre, during, and post-construction to make sure that goes well, including rerouting our utilities so they don't compete with the critical root zone, and being very careful in how we place the sidewalk. So this is a really great project. We're glad that we've been able to solve this, work with the neighbors, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Thank you. We're gonna close the application to the public and we'll open it to the board for discussion.
So
Questions.
did you or the developer go to the neighborhood association with the plan? I'm just wondering, because
Yes, we did, and actually, Mr.
Waring,
No, well, yes, Councilman Waring is supportive. He left. I said I didn't feel like he needed to stay. But also Andrew, who was actually just in here, is an adjacent neighbor and leadership of the neighborhood. So we coordinated with him. It's a bit interesting over here. There are a lot of people who
Which
claim,
neighborhood is it? Is
Magnolia.
it's Magnolia? Okay,
yeah.
okay.
We've worked on the project off and on for a couple of years, ma'am, and there've been a few people who've claimed to be leadership of the neighborhood. It's really kind of weird over there. So we try to stay out of all that, but we had a few calls with Andrew, working calls, digital calls, and we're able to make sure that everyone was informed and they were supportive. And so we've had a really good time working.
Except for the woman who lives behind it. She's used to having a wildlife habitat there, so.
Yeah, there's been a lot of things like that.
Well, which one is she? Is she behind the property line where the trees are being remain?
I think it's
Or is
back
it-
here
I
somewhere.
think
so I
it's
mean-
on the back.
So
Yeah.
Jerry, somewhere,
Right, yeah, it's one of these.
I think Gary's the little curvy street
Yes,
there.
Gary is this road.
Yeah.
So I mean, the trees being removed really don't even impact.
No,
She's
she's
just-
several-
She's having.
I would say that red oak's probably right in her backyard.
and
Yeah,
it's
and we
removed.
are saving that,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
That was the other thing too, we denote the grands on here, and then we have different symbols for removals and savings. Half the time, people don't even look at our applications, so.
It's a really odd lot, isn't it? Being so large.
I was just looking at.
The
aerial-
depth, it's not like a,
Yeah.
3 lots, somebody bought 3 lots, along the frontage there. It's.
What kind of property, like what kind of houses are you building?
Single family detached,
Single family detached?
and
Are
it'll
they
be custom architecture, because it's not, they're rotated, most of them are wide, they're not like a typical Charleston single.
gonna be-
So yeah, we've already got that, and we've done some preliminary designs for those.
And is there gonna be landscape buffers all around the exterior perimeter for the neighbors?
So
Just worried about privacy.
We're same, so there are no required buffers, but we will have a privacy, we committed to a privacy
Backyard.
fence and landscape. Yeah, it's working with the neighborhood. We want to be great neighbors, we're not trying to do anything bad in here. I think we've just gotten associated with past folks who've tried to put like multifamily in here. You get that from time to time. Yeah, so just 7 nice little homes and fixing up the historic home in the front. I've got more calls about people wanting to buy that house and put it on the historic register than negative comments, which I think is kind of cool.
So definitely want to document all the changes that you do on it. But I think again, another good application. I would just maybe
Agree.
note that red oak, I don't think it would happen in this instance when we have larger developments. Specific trees are shown to remain, and then when they start to come and actually develop that parcel, all of a sudden this tree needs to be removed. I want to make sure that red oak does remain.
Oh, yes, everyone's on board, and we've got so many people who've made that agreement.
Yes.
We're keeping each other honest.
But maybe that would be in the motion, sorry, that red oak is not to be considered for removal.
Or that no
In the
further
future.
removals on any of
Yeah.
these parcels.
Right, because they're all fee simple.
Right, correct, that's right.
And there shouldn't, because it's all custom architecture.
Yeah. And they're all being done, but they'd all be done by the same builder.
Yes, that's the goal, yes, that is the goal. So I think one builder would, our folks are developers and horizontal developers, and they like to work with just one group to buy a little infill neighborhood like this.
Any other questions? Anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, we move to approve the staff recommendations, adding that we don't want to see any further requests for tree removals on any of the fee simple lots.
Thank you for that motion.
I'll second.
Right, motion by Ms. Amanda, seconded by Jeff. All in favor, I am in favor.
I am in favor.
In favor, any opposed? 4-0, thanks so much for that. I'll stay.
Well, that was a record.
Ends the meeting. That was